Hello and welcome to another episode of I Could Never Be Here on Popcorn Talk. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm so grateful that you choose to tune in and week out. We have another amazing guest today. And if this is not your first time joining the show, you know I always have a reason for this opening song. Today is no different. Beautiful People by Chris Brown. The first is these lyrics. I don't know if you guys have ever actually focused on the lyrics, but it's your life. Your beauty's deep inside. Don't let anybody bring you down. And I think that's just an important message, no matter what day it is, no matter what your fears are, what you're experiencing in life. Don't let anybody bring you down. Your beauty's deep inside. The world is full of beautiful people. The second reason, though, that I'm playing this song is this song and the album that this song was on won a Grammy for today's guest. He is a world-renowned music producer and writer who has worked with some of the biggest guests, including Chris Brown, including Justin Bieber, as well as Shakira, Halsey, Christina Aguilera, so many other top names. Please welcome Adam Messenger. How you doing today?
I'm great, dude. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. It's a Monday. You know, Monday is when we have these shows, and it's always good. It's always good to start off on the right foot, get some motivation, get some inspiration going on.
I agree.
And for anyone who, if you're joining us, again, we are live Mondays at 4:10 here on Popcorn Talk and on their YouTube. We also have a podcast. Please subscribe, rate that. If you want to follow Adam, his Twitter is poppin'. At Adam Messenger _. I only say that because before the show you said that it's maybe faded off because you're a dad and you have other stuff going on.
Changed everything. No, my Twitter game has definitely been slipping, just a bit.
That's not a bad thing though.
But it's a good time. It's never too late, right? To bring it back, to put the energy in the right place.
Yeah, and especially now with 280 characters,
whole new world.
You double the amount of inspiration and stuff that you can share.
Indeed.
Very nice, very nice. Well, looking at your career path, it's been amazing, and even talking before the show of the rise that it's been and the gradual rise of, like you were saying, and we'll dive into a lot of this, of starting, what a lot of people might say of why did you take this time in your 20s to work on the projects that you did before you moved to LA and when you're around 30. But I want to kind of get back to the beginning, because you grew up a long ways away from here in Toronto and started playing music at crazy young, at 5 years old?
5, maybe 4. I started, twiddling on the piano and went into piano lessons from there, and kind of branched off. And I guess I realized, as did my parents, that I enjoyed music. And so I feel lucky that I kind of fell into at least knowing that much early on.
Now, were they in music at all, or what was your inspiration, or what was the reasoning when you were 4 or 5 to, start playing the keys?
My parents, no, neither of them were in music per se. My mom was always very musical. She does sing. But I guess my older sister was actually 5 years ahead of me and already kind of delving into the arts herself. More so like in theater with acting, dancing, and singing herself. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of, she might have opened a bit of a door for my parents to think, oh, maybe Adam should go into this art school, which I did end up going from grade 4 through to high school. It actually continues through high school. So there were some musical opportunities that I feel fortunate about being exposed to early on.
Now you have how old is your son?
I have a 4 3/4-year-old son. He'll correct you if you don't nail it.
Has he started touching the keys yet?
He's been touching since he was, 8 months old probably. But there's no pressuring or anything.
Yeah.
He seems quite musical himself, but he's not taking lessons yet per se.
Yeah.
Anything.
The school that you were enrolled in, at what point did you realize that maybe that could be a career, or was that always a hobby? And I know you said you had other hobbies, including swinging of the bat for a little while.
It was either going to the major leagues as a baseball player, or it was going to be probably music. And I think the choice became kind of more and more evident by the teenage years. Though I did play on my high school baseball team. So I told you earlier, I kept it up for a minute. But yeah, no, music was kind of meant to be. As far as a career path, and I feel like I really never thought of it on those terms as far as career, and especially not as far as like a business to be in, which is necessary to sustain a career or being involved in a path that you want to be doing for a living, essentially, right? But I never. It took me a while to really, push myself to kind of really, okay, now, if I really want to be, continuing to do this for like through my life or however long I can, I had to kind of start, bringing in a little more of a mindset for a bit more of a business cap, I guess, and to figure out where I could hopefully be of value in making music with and for others, to help sustain a career. And whether that, I didn't know if it was going to be like pop music per se, or I definitely knew the difference between, more commercial music than, some of the music I was studying, whether jazz or classical music in school growing up. But yeah, so that just to point on what you said earlier about taking, through my 20s, where I took my time, definitely kind of honing in on stuff before I really, like on my craft, on that side of it before, getting down here to LA anyway, and kind of pushing to kind of maximize opportunities, I guess, on a business level.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about, where you fit in of making music and helping others make music. Because a lot of people, when you're, like you're saying, you're playing piano, you're the performer at those ages. You're the, I think you also played saxophone, and what other instruments am I missing?
I played some guitar, a bunch of guitar, a lot of bass. Actually, I was in my rock band from grade 6. I think we started.
What was the name? What do we got?
we went through some changes.
I love these.
Well, naturally, it began as DAPA,
Nice.
which was the essential acronym for Dan, Adam, Phil, and
Solid.
Adrian. And it progressed. We added a 5th member at some point because that's what you do. You get a second guitar player.
Yeah.
Once Guns N' Roses takes over, you got to shift with the times. For at that point, we were called OPM, which stood for whatever your heart desired. We told our parents it was out past midnight. So, it was within the band. It was I shouldn't say it on the air.
There were meetings. At what point did you, I guess, realize that you wouldn't be, or you didn't want to be the performer, you wanted to do more producing and be able to help out, like you're saying, with other people's music? How was that transition period?
That was, I think, transition that kind of happened through university, where, while at school, kind of increased, make myself available as well to do gigs outside of, playing live gigs, which I did. But I had been developing my home studio, and I had, I just basically got myself into a place where I had resources to help, be adaptable, above and beyond my musical studies, I guess, and, knowing, a certain degree about different musical styles and what went into it, whatever. But the kind of arranging part of that, which turned into producing, recording and producing, kind of allowed me organically to kind of fall into, well, I may not choose to be a jazz pianist, go down to New York, let's say, and potentially starve as a jazz pianist. Like, I have a couple friends who went that route. Instead, I kind of recognized, it wasn't about this, starving and whether I was going to make money or that. It was more just, I think in me, I had too much interest in too many different styles of music, too many different instruments as well by that point, not wanting to kind of just get locked into a single instrument, a single genre, or anything like that. So it naturally fell into being kind of like pushing myself to be adaptable and to keep variety and musically and creatively in what I was doing, and that I guess helped me be more available for others depending on what it was. And
Yeah, no, I think for a lot of people, they see the artist out front and they think that, they see their rise to success. I think Bieber had a movie about, him playing guitar and singing at such a young age, and, they follow that all the way up, but they don't necessarily know the stories of a lot of producers of how they get into their, current job and current career. Because obviously, every producer, you have to be very musically talented growing up, I would assume.
Yeah, not in every. It depends. Okay. Yes, more and less depending on the genre of music. But yes, you need to you need to kind of have a a good internal kind of dialogue that filters and that kind of takes in ideas and creativity and kind of helps has a good sensibility for how that should be best molded and presented. I mean, that's kind of number one. So there's some producers who never touch an instrument, really. There's some that don't even touch a computer.
Really?
Even in this day and age, I don't think there's that many at this point. But it still is the term producer can be defined as kind of wide range as you want. It can simply be about the kind of overseeing the process of turning a song into a musical recording, and the kind of decisions, the creative input and the decisions that go into shaping it. But that said, yeah, there are more producers that do know something about music and do play, and but the background kind of it varies really, and some producers really it comes from them having spent that many hours on their own programming beats on an MPC or certain gear that is wouldn't be seen would be seen separate from like traditional forms of like studying music or taking lessons or anything formal in that way, but it serves all the same or even more in some cases as far as the training that would go towards making great music on the other end.
I really want to focus a lot of people, and even what I was able to, find out, good old Google, right? You can find a lot of stuff. From when you got to LA at 30, and we talk about all the artists that you work with, the awards, 2 Grammy nominations, 1 Grammy win, and all that is when you got to LA. But talking before the show, and even just what we've casually talked about, is that your 20s was really kind of almost the foundation for that.
Yeah, it was on so many accounts. Essentially, just the quote unquote the 10,000 hours that they suggest if you spend at something that you become a master at something. I wouldn't call myself a master because I know that I'm still learning and still working at it, every day. But I do know that I spent a good amount of time just kind of head down. In the trenches, really just honing the craft and just trying to make, the best music, make anything that I was working on it, the best it could be. Whether it was, I did a lot of, I'll call them small gigs, not to, what if to downplay them, I guess, or to insult them. I did a lot of recordings for like events, for bar mitzvahs or weddings that were, I for like 3-4 years with a company, a couple ladies who redesigned the lyrics to a certain popular song or whatever to pertain to the family, or what if it was like a bar mitzvah or a wedding or a 50-year anniversary for the couple, whatever it was. They'd make these kind of, it was a little comical, a little silly. They'd change the lyrics of a hit song, but
that sounds amazing.
Well,
it sounds fun.
It sounds funny. You know what? It was actually, though I did, obviously, I took it seriously enough to make sure that it was really good. It was actually a less pressured kind of forum for me to kind of just dig in on stuff and actually try to match, hit record recordings, essentially. And, totally unorthodox without knowing how they did it, but really just kind of use the tools I had in front of me to kind of shape away and try to get, a recording that basically you wouldn't know the difference, between the original and what I had done.
Yeah.
So, but they were gigs, and they
paid the bills.
They did, and other sorts of gigs, I guess, that were. I wasn't like, how is this going to be the stepping stone to my next thing, whatever. I was just kind of like in there for a while. And just hopefully, really learning what I was doing.
Yeah, I was wondering, was that your, you look back on it now and you say it's your 10,000 hours, your time when you really learned a lot. Was that your focus, or what? That wasn't your focus then of, this is my time now, I'm taking this time and going at a reasonable pace to be able to learn what I need to learn to advance myself 4 or 5, 10 years down the line?
I feel like I probably, pardon me, I would, come to think of it every so often, where it's like, oh, okay, as far as the long-term plan, like, oh, I'm kind of doing this, and kind of have a blurry vision of maybe this is what it's doing or where it's leading. But I think I really was very much more kind of stepwise, and not hurrying myself. It might even seem like not pushing myself or not really ambitious for a while. But I think it's more just I had a certain patience with the whole thing, which I think is paid off in a good way. And I do believe everybody. I think I mentioned this earlier. Everybody has patience, in them that works in different ways, from one person to the next. And I think it's what happens when people kind of like find their forte or find a strength or something is maybe they kind of, tap into somewhere where they do have the patience to kind of stick at it a bit longer than maybe the next person. So I think that's maybe kind of what happened with me. I was a little bit maybe oblivious to, aspects of a long-term plan for, certain periods along the way, and I'd just be digging in and that kind of, it was just about being patient enough with it and going with the flow.
Do you see a lot of people now that, are trying maybe up and coming or trying to get in the industry that don't have that patience?
I do. I think it's very common, and not just in this industry or with music producers per se or songwriters but I think it's very common, and especially in entertainment. I think I mean there is definitely a focus on even more so in being like in front of the camera or aiming to be at the front of the stage. People obviously there's this universal thing of being enamored with youth, and there is a lot of energy there, and that does kind of feed people, or people are engaged with that often in entertainment, whatever aspect of it. But it definitely doesn't end at 20, 25, or 30 or whatever that is. I mean, you brought up, so again, we talked a bit before this, didn't we? You brought up Morgan Freeman, such an example, or someone who did not really get his his first, significant role or gig till he was, almost 40 or whatever. And look at the career, since then. And that, and I think the trajectory for most people these days, I mean, where I think, the age span is increasing, consistently, and we're all aware of maybe how to look after ourselves a bit better and think about the long run. And there is generally more time than you think there is for achieving certain goals or getting to certain places. And even, if that goal that you had, a month from now you don't hit that exactly, because it generally is not going to happen the way you think it's going to, as far as making it or getting in certain doors. And a year later you might look back at and hopefully be able to recognize, well, what would have been the point of that actually panning out exactly that way anyway. I'm here now, and now I have more drive to still make it and to still keep pushing forward to achieve things that I haven't yet. So that's, I mean, I do see that people are often in a rush. Yeah.
And it's like you were saying, it's the age that we live in, of people want to be the youngest to do something. Like, oh, the youngest this, or they want to be the next big thing. And there is such that rush and fight. And if you're not that person, or even if you're someone who is in your low 20s or mid 20s, and you're seeing the next big thing, or the youngest person who is doing something at age 17 or 18, sometimes it can get you down, and you need to just kind of refocus on that patience.
Yeah, I think it's all about balance. It really is, right? I do remember times where I was in, more of that really competitive kind of head state. And when I was younger, and a teenager, wanting to be like, really accomplished for that age, or, really wanting to kind of feel like I've stepped ahead, or whatever in certain things. But then it kind of comes back around where, you can almost feel there might be disillusionment from, is that a word? Disillusionment?
Yep.
From really, staying locked on that, in that gear, in that one gear. At a certain point, you're kind of like, well, wait a second, is this, exact lane of focus, is this all that kind of life is? And probably not. And, maybe if you kind of just, put on the brakes for a second, you'll be able to kind of look around and feed off of more to actually feed back into your next endeavors. And so, I mean, again, it's about a balance. It isn't about, sitting back completely and, being, to the point of being lazy or just, unambitious. But it's got to be, done with some balance.
What was the feeling when you were moving to LA? What went through your mind kind of building up to that? How long of a process was that?
That had kind of built up over a few years before that in my head. I had visited down here a couple times with another producer friend I knew, and also with who would become my partner, who had already been working with Nasri. I was working with him in Toronto, going back to when he was in high school and I was in university. He had been down actually in New York more than anywhere for over a couple years, trying to make relationships and kind of help create some momentum in the industry himself. But we both ended up here in LA. So it was kind of like, picking up a bit where I left off with him, which was really still working, like creating songs for him as an artist. And also this other producer songwriter friend, Giuliano, and so there's kind of a couple things that I figured I'd be, in collaboration with Angles, and it definitely, turned out to be, the putting my energy together with Nasri, who would kind of flip the switch towards, focusing his energy more on like, the writing part has really been, had been his strength, and outside of being a singer. But the idea of collaborating with me, who I had already been producing for some time, but like to do that together for artists down here, kind of we hit a stride with that pretty quick. So yeah, again, it did still feel pretty blind, like coming down here, like, okay, well, I think now's a good time to jump on down here with my my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife ultimately. Nice. Which is an odd, unique story. That's the only unique part about coming down here from Toronto. Like there's a lot of talent from Canada, period, but from Toronto specifically, you're in this, the biggest metropolis of that country, and there's a lot of amazing talent up there, a lot of things going on, but. To kind of like feel that like tangible, sustainability for a career, it's like it more often than not ends up we come down to either New York or LA or even Nashville historically, or Miami even, Chicago maybe. But anyway, but this became, at that time it was becoming this, more and more the place where creative people were, it started coming over, and it made sense when I got here, and like I said, just some things kind of fell into place, and most especially working with Nasri anyway.
What was her thought about moving? Did you have to convince her, or was she always behind you? Was that what kind of a discussion?
It's a great question. It's potentially complicated. Could take up the rest of. No, I'm kidding. No. She had been in a whole bunch of different.
She didn't believe in you at all. She was like, "This is a disaster. It's not."
What are we doing? Oh my gosh, what am I doing? But no, it's she'd been in a bunch of different ways within the entertainment world herself. Fashion world first, and then in TV and film, and it made, I believe, just as much sense for her to come down here and aim to connect with, some resources and contacts that she would have as well, and to just, to be down here, and which is really, still the land of the most number of opportunities, I believe, within whatever facet of the entertainment world. And it still does such a good job of kind of projecting itself back onto the rest of the world, and the rest of the world seems to engage with it. Still, it's Hollywood still has its place in the world. And I mean, there's Bollywood, of course, too. And film can be, it's made all over the place, but still, Hollywood is, it's very strong.
The creation of film usually takes place here.
Yeah, and like I said, since 2007, when it was that we got down here over 10 years ago, it had kind of become like even people from New York were coming over, and the creative people anyway, and that's so kind of came to the right place. hit, a certain stride at the right time with, the right people. And
What was the time from when you moved here in 2007 to when you felt like you kind of were in your stride? Where it wasn't like trying to get those gears running again. Was
about 3 weeks.
Really?
Funny enough, I mean, not the full stride, but about 3 weeks after getting here, Nasri and I found ourselves in the studio with Babyface.
Wow.
And there's a writing session going on with a producer that or another writer, producer, I believe, that was signed to him. And it kind of, it opened up our eyes to like, wow, okay, so there are people who have, achieved a whole lot, in their days, who are looking for hungry, talented people. And they're open to whoever you are, whether you just got here 3 weeks ago, or you're Canadian, or wherever you're from. I guess I showed up, or we showed up with something to offer, and anyway, that thing with Babyface didn't exactly go somewhere. He offered us then that day, that conversation, he had us back to talk about things, and offered us like the A room, he could put us up there and certain, things. And then like a couple weeks after that, we found out, he actually was now going on tour himself and doing some other, he was Babyface, and he had, things that, you could, his life was about outside of the studio and whatever. So we didn't, but we're like, cool, that's okay. We're going to wait for that per se. Because it was really only like another month later, I think, that we did get a call to an opportunity to work in the studio with New Kids on the Block. They were going to get back in the studio and try like this. I wasn't yet, deemable as being a reunion album, but that's what it became. And Donnie Wahlberg had been handed by our lawyer, who we had met, who started representing us. He had handed, Donnie, Nasri's CD of his current, songs and whatever, most of which I had been involved with him, and Donnie got like really pumped up from it, and ended up like calling the reunion kind of right there, and got the guys in the studio, and it was cool. It went from there. It was a good opportunity, and things led from there.
Yeah. Is there a way to make it into the industry, or is it just finding that one connection that will lead to the next connection, and hopefully be able to continue showing your reputation?
There's certainly no one way. You cannot plan for one way that it's going to happen. Like I said, it generally will not happen that way if you have a way that you're planning for it to happen. I mean, yes, you put your focus and your energy, into, being of value in a certain way. Like, you don't want to be kind of spread all over the place. But you want to have, to be tangible in some way, with your identity of what you can bring to the table. But, I mean, it's sometimes can be, you're working with like 10 different, projects or artists or certain things or people that, you think there's good promise with collaborating with, and so you might be thinking kind of long term. You don't know which is going to maybe pan out. And then it might be, one single connection that pops in that like suddenly elevates kind of everything you're doing, and gives new opportunity to either like something specific or everything that you've been working on. And it all kind of feeds into that, one opportunity. So, I mean, I don't know what to say to that, but just like really it's about, there's definitely an insight in mind, or the opposite of out of sight, out of mind factor. As small as the world, continues to become, online, and the availability of communication, any moment with anybody on the earth, there is still something about the tangible. It almost works against itself, like, or it works in favor of the being in person with someone. And feeling something that is, more genuine about, like, you're working with someone towards something, and there's that human, I guess, element, the connection that maybe resonates just a bit further than however many people you have, that you're communicating with on your device. So
You're talking with, you said when you were working with New Kids on the Block, and obviously we named the other names, Chris Brown, Bieber, Christina Aguilera. Are you constantly trying to learn things from them as well, or what is that pairing like when you're in the studio or you're working with them on music?
I mean, you never stop learning, and certainly in situations in studio, and even out of studio, when you're collaborating with an artist, you do learn stuff about, specifics to that artist and, how they tick and how they kind of operate, and you're kind of learning as you go. The best way to kind of get to the finish line, hopefully, with a certain record you're working on, which, the finish line being a place where they ultimately, number one, they feel happy about it. And then not secondary, but, the second gate, let's say, is that, nobody at the label or the manager or anybody has any problem with releasing, what you've worked on, and bringing to the fans. So you're definitely learning something specific to, about each artist, but also there's general things that you're kind of learning about. Oh, so right, these are things that I might be able to do to help make them feel more comfortable, or, not to like have to sell them on, your ideas or something, whatever. But some, there is some of that sometimes, where to help make them feel comfortable to trust you.
Especially when you first get in the door. I mean, when you're trying to build these relationships with these huge stars, and you have to have that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, and usually what will have happened is that something you've worked on already will kind of speak for you on your behalf ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what usually happens, and in my case did happen, where my work was able to generally speak for itself, I guess, and put enough of that trust in people, whether it's the artist or their management or the label who hooked up the session, or publisher that put it together, because they already know, like they can trust that what you've already done, like this is something that we want, or this is something that the artist is excited about, and it might even be a song that was already written. And also, obviously, in that case, if they love the song, they would love that to be a part of their body of work. And so, however much they need to put their stamp on it, it might totally change, or it might barely change. It might just be about putting their vocals on it in some cases. Not to that there's anything wrong with that if that fits. Not every artist is like so precious about needing to have written every single lyric or whatever, but if they feel like it works in their in their brand, but just in themselves, to want to represent this song and to sing those lyrics on stage, if it becomes a hit, they're gonna have to sing it night after night. So
they want to have that personalization.
And sometimes and it's great to feel that they don't need to mess with it too much to feel a personal connection to it. It's kind of already there, and that's awesome. But not to expect that. Regardless, what was the question?
Well, we'll talk. I want to talk about the pressure as someone who was kind of up and coming in the industry of, going into these meetings and studio sessions. What pressure did you face, or how did you kind of maybe push that back to be like, I can't focus on necessarily the reputation of the person that I'm working with. I need to be able to focus on the job and getting it done. How did you, I mean, you're going into a studio with Chris Brown or Justin Bieber. There's obviously pressure there.
Sure. It's generally not a bad pressure. I mean, it depends on the artist. Those two guys they were great in the studio. Like they don't make it and there's nothing strange, you know what I mean? It's generally a comfortable place to be working, and in both those situations there was material already that they were fans of, that they want, you know what I mean? That did help really open the gate. It's sort of like, you already know there's a sense of approval, kind of, to a certain degree going in, and then from there you can kind of start, working on new songs, and it kind of, can come out a lot more naturally, once you're kind of in the door. Yeah. But yeah, and as far as it being like being around, a big star or something, sure, there's a certain energy, there's a certain thing that you kind of everyone. I mean, I'm generally not. Too starstruck. Well, yeah, too starstruck. But I do have that every once in a while. It's like, oh yeah, wow, there's a lot of people out there that are really excited to hear what you're going to come out with next. Like, I mean, it's just more of that than anything. Like, so it's sort of like, my focus ends up turning away from like, who is this person? How as big a star as they are. It's more about, wow, there's a real significance to this music that we're, going to create here, and hopefully will satisfy, a large audience that's out there, and hopefully we'll have a great impact on this large audience. And so that's more the I think there's an excitement from that more than, there's some pressure obviously to make it as amazing as it can be.
But you can harness that energy and use it for good, dude. Like push you forward to be able to be like, oh, this is awesome. This is a great opportunity. I can use this as a springboard and be able to really put, something great together.
Totally.
What, is it like being the person kind of writing that music and producing that music, but not the person who is maybe performing? And so a lot of people out there, like you're saying, a lot of people are looking forward to this person's new music, and it's coming out, and they're the one who it's like, oh, what about Justin Bieber's song this? What about Chris Brown or Iggy Azalea? They see these people and they think they're all their songs. What is that like being someone behind the scenes who is kind of responsible for that music? Do you like the fact that, your name isn't right out there for people?
Well, you brought, we're just talking about the idea of pressure involved. Well, for those guys, that's a whole other level of pressure that I can't really identify with, thinking that I could really be, in comfortable enough shoes doing what they do generally. And so maybe there's a trade-off, right? Where it's like, okay, so my name's generally not going to be going on the front of the product, but it's kind of for good reason, and maybe I feel like I have gotten my fair due of credit or respect or around the work that I've done, and
absolutely.
and I do feel like for me personally anyway, it's I haven't felt like I've been missing a certain type of attention or a recognition that sure would be in a different sort of sorts when you are the artist, that has your name, and you are at the front of that stage, performing the songs. For me, I think it's a little more comfortable, and generally I haven't felt like I've haven't been.
There's less Twitter pressure.
Less Twitter. That's the problem, though. I should get myself more right out there, so it would definitely it would keep a fire under my arse to keep my Twitter game up.
There you go. What inspires you when you're writing music? Where does the inspiration for a song come from?
It comes from all different sources, and I feel like in recent times, or progressively, I think, at least with my partnership with Nasri, we generally play, like once we became kind of a duo, I guess, working for other artists, we definitely, we took our roles, which are not completely independent, but like we recognize, okay, so, you're going to do what you do generally, and I'm going to do what I do, and it intersects for sure, but, and it has, it has kind of blurred more over time, where he, didn't originally know how to even operate, the computer as far as recording things or what anything was going on in there. And I also had less of a sensibility around top lining or lyrical, strength in songs. And so it's kind of, combined to whatever degree, and he's an incredible engineer now, trust me. He'll tell you himself. No. But we, anyway, as far as where inspiration comes from, working with Nasri, he's got like way too many ideas to ever put into action. Generally, so I'm usually dealing with like a surplus of ideas to kind of like, well, let me take like just a couple of these for a second, and whether it's working with Magic, his band itself, or for other, just having songs in the catalog that we know should be of value to someone somewhere, or with another specific artist. There's usually a lot of ideas kind of already there, and my job is, I often start, from the point of filtering, and just kind of editing, down to, like reducing the amount of information really, and what do we need, what is poignant here, and and
you get it from B to C.
Yeah,
A's
more,
already there,
more
and
often.
it's like, okay, what can we do?
And see, more often, I feel like I have to kind of stay out of the way of A, to not be additive in that way, and B to C or to D and E or wherever it needs to, to go. But yeah, I mean,
and I think that's awesome that you know that is your niche and role, where a lot of people might be like, oh, but I want to get involved in it, but I want to do that, instead of being like, you're great for being like, just do what you do.
Yeah, I like A too. But I feel like just in the last 3-4 years, maybe, it has increasingly, I feel like I've been not put into, but it's just been natural kind of progression into kind of looking more at B through D or whatever. And yeah, and it's been good to me too.
What would you say is your biggest accomplishment in music, with the awards, with
with in general? It's clearly my my son.
Yeah.
But yeah, in music, biggest accomplishment.
I mean, yeah, with the awards, with Magic had Rude went #1. Is there an accomplishment that sticks out to you that you look back on now and you're like, wow?
Yeah, I mean, sure, certainly it was a bit surreal to see the impact that Rude took on, like the very quick kind of trajectory. Once it was like it was there, and it was like, okay, and it was released, and then it just like suddenly territories sort of started picking up on it, and it really had a just incredible rise that none of us foresaw. And it's kind of a little bit annoying, looking back, that it's like, well, that was one of those records that we're working on with no foresight, no plans. There was no calculation of like, this is, well, we're gonna make it like this because that'll help it be a hit or something. This was like a Magic, the band, the whole thing was like this kind of side project that Nasri was really gung-ho about, not doing it as a side project, but just it was like outside of all the, writing for other artists that were already established, this thing that he wanted to try doing, always looking for his kind of opportunity to come to as an artist to really get the stage, and like that never left him, which is great. But this band kind of configuration and this type of sound and whatever, which kind of came out of a couple records, songs that we had made, Nasri and I, together, going back a few years before that. But then, the guys that became Magic kind of showed up here in LA, literally having, come from Toronto themselves, and were looking to, to write for people too, and to do that whole thing. It just showed up it fell into place really well, and became this band. But it was just really kind of fun, with the way the songs were kind of being created, and it was really liberated, and not bogged down with like, so it's kind of got to work for this artist and their brand, and or we got to make it kind of structure the song so that it's like really like this, so that the A&R person's gonna understand why it's gonna work for their artist, or why a publisher is gonna be like, oh, we could pitch this to this, or try to place this for this,
And maybe that's why it had as much success as it did, because it
maybe. I mean, maybe. Yeah, it was very organic.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's say that. Yes, it worked so well because we didn't pre-plan anything, and again, Rude. It was like one of the easiest records I've ever made. Which again, it's annoying to see that. Well, it just connected as well as it did, and it can never be recreated, nor should it be attempted. I mean, I was gonna say,
do you feel pressure to recreate something that can get to #1, or to have something else win a Grammy? Is there pressure now that you've attained that, of trying to get back to that?
Well, sure, but I mean, again, that all has to be taken with a grain of salt, or with a sense of balance as well. It's like, oh wow, that was awesome. That would be great to be able to repeat something like that or whatever, but also accept that type of thing was already a kind of a off the path, kind of left field thing that connected, that you can't expect to really do it, at least from the creation standpoint, to do that again. It was a blip in the radar,
there were a bunch of factors that came together to make that what it was.
Yeah, and so it is what it is, and so you kind of accept that, and that what comes next, which will hopefully work as well, as far as just the impact that it can have, will probably have to be something either very different or at least a little bit different, and but hopefully you can feel, like it has, it produces that sort of impact, which really is, a powerful thing, and it's amazing to feel. And so as far as accomplishments, like you asked, yeah, to see, it's not like the stats of it or like, oh, it went #1 on the Hot 100. But it's just to see that snowball effect of the impact that obviously, like, clearly made a lot of people feel good listening to it, and that's if there's anything calculated, that was it. That, like, man, let's make this record feel as good as it can feel. Let's make a feel good, song or like recording out of this song, and that's what translated, I guess, and that was the impact.
What would be your definition of success? And as far as your career, your life, looking back on it, and what you've accomplished, and then what advice do you have for other people to reach that success?
Well, I mean, speaking generally, like we've kind of already touched on, I think if you can feel good about going at, the pace that feels, balanced to you, it doesn't feel like you're going off a cliff, pushing for something in a certain way that you think is going to happen a certain way, but you also don't feel like you're kind of laying back too much or resting, on your laurels. So a good balanced kind of form of ambition is important, and that kind of it's in of itself produce success, being that if you're feeling happy within the process of it, that really is kind of success, because, like, getting there is cool. I think if you ever really get there, like, I think when you get there, it's kind of like, okay, cool, but I'm still going, like, where's the next there, right? That's not, you don't end, on a certain path. So it keeps going, and it's about the process, overall in life in general. And, that would include outside of what you do in your career and, feeling, kind of, some fulfillment, whether you have, you get married, you build a family or anything of that sort. Obviously, when you do that, when you engage in that part, that has to be part of the overall kind of the mission. And
I think it's you saying that you don't want to rush, because there's always that next thing to rush towards. You can always be rushing towards something.
Right. I mean, having said that, the universe does respond to things that move and engage quickly, and that when you meet your points and you hit your marks, and there is an awesome effect you can see from that. But it can't be done, feeling like you're chicken with your head cut off, in that fashion. It's good. It's nice to feel like there is a balance in the short game and the long game, right?
Yeah.
You can't be thinking like what I'm doing is all setting up for when I'm 80 or 40 years down the line, whatever it is. It's, you got to think kind of with it. You also can't be thinking, I want to make sure that I achieve this next week or in the next month. It has to be, where do I want to see myself in a year from now, through the next 5 years, or something kind of balanced in that way. And that might not mean that that probably usually will suggest that you have certain goals that are very short-term based, and you have things that are long-term based, and they kind of converge in a in as harmonious a way as they can.
I think that's a great way to put it. We've gotten to that point. We have a couple minutes left, and I always do at the end, it's like a game or just some rapid fire questions that are just 5-10 second answers. We always have some fun music too, which always, of course, makes it better. So just gonna shoot some questions towards you and have you just give me some quick answers. You ready to go?
I'll try.
All right. What music right now do you listen to at the gym or in the car?
Well, in the car is usually different than in the gym.
Is there music right now that you're listening to?
In the car will often be music on the radio, as much as that is not the only thing that dictates what people in the world like these days with streaming and the accessibility to everything. But I will kind of still listen to see how music is programmed. Commercial music, anyway.
Is there someone's music personally, like an artist that you're listening to?
Well, of that music, sure. Like I think it's more kind of song by song. Like I appreciate Childish Gambino, for instance. That record that really cut through. And I kind of listen for song. I mean, I appreciate, you know, like just really talented artists like Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, I generally will look out for records that kind of I'm happy for, got the chance to cut through, that weren't exactly following trends per se, or weren't being cookie cutter and, you know, sounding like they were designed to be reaching a commercial audience, right?
Desert Island, you can listen to one album ever. What would it be?
Wow. It's probably gonna. I don't know. It's probably gonna be. Can you give me three?
I'll give you two.
Okay, two. It'll be probably Michael Jackson, Thriller, or it would be Steely Dan, Asia.
All right. Favorite band of all time?
Damn, that's so hard. What genre can you? Favorite band? I will say it's because it's a bit of an anomaly. Most people wouldn't say it. Level 42.
Nice. I gotta ask this because everyone has their various thoughts. Quick thoughts: Taylor Swift's new album. Love it, hate it.
Appreciate certain risks taken for her as an artist. I can't tell you I love it or hate it. I generally, it wouldn't be the type of thing I would like rush to make sure I hear the day it's released.
Yeah. But maybe over time.
Maybe over time.
Who's the next breakout star? Like in 2 years or a year or two, who are you hearing? Who's the breakout star that people are gonna know and maybe you're gonna be a household name?
I'd like to say Sabrina Claudio, not just because she's been, you know, working continuously with people like in my team around my circles, but I think she, you know, from what I've seen, I'm proud that she's been really sticking to her guns as an artist stylistically and not really listening too much to what anyone is telling her they think she should be, you know, sounding like essentially. So just musically speaking, she's been stubborn in a very good way.
She's got such a very unique sound,
and she's sticking to it. And I'd love to see that break out.
Yeah,
as
I
far
think
as it
Apple's next big thing, and they're the person that they're focusing on right now. And final question: who haven't you worked with that you want to work with in the industry?
Wow, great question. I haven't thought of that for a minute. But I would say I would, you know, love to work with Saint Pop. Always appreciated the artist known as Pink. I think she, you know, she's just an amazing singer and very soulful. Yet, you know, it totally translates in commercial and pop music essentially. That would be great. I'm also very jealous of another producer, Greg Kurstin, right now for having produced the whole Foo Fighters latest album.
Yes.
Because I'd love to go that direction if opportunity allowed.
Well, be patient. You're ready. You are obviously in a great position, and like you saying, that's a lot of it is just placing yourself in the long game to be able to do that kind of stuff, and you've done that. So
far so good. Still working at it. Can't lie.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Adam.
You,
I
Michael.
appreciate it. Again, Twitter @AdamMessenger_.
I think that's what it is.
There you go.
MESSINGER.
Perfect.
Set it straight.
And you can follow the show. I am your host, Michael Clouse. You can follow me @TheOnlyMC on Twitter, on Instagram. Again, we are live here with video every Monday at 4:10 on Popcorn Talk Network. You can also follow us on the podcast to listen anytime. If you're in a long drive, you want to be able to get some motivation, inspiration, you can follow that on iTunes Podcast. Comment, rate, subscribe, show us some love on Instagram, on Twitter, on all social media. The world needs it right now. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of I Could Never Be. We'll see you next time.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network. We would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.